Hey everyone, Amia here from Resonance Astrology, and welcome to this week's weekly overview where we take a look at what the hell is going on up there and how it's impacting us down here, because as above, so below. And I'm gonna be here and help you translate the language of the stars so it makes it all make more sense and sound more cohesive. And let's start off with briefly sitting down, taking a breather, and taking in some post-Taurus new moon reflections. I'm wondering how you guys are doing with that. I posted some of them on my Instagram tomorrow. Well, we're already in the future, apparently. Yesterday. And I just want to read them here as well, because I know not everybody on here has Instagram, and I still think it's important to just sit with these. So I'm going to read them to you. Not everything intense is intimate. Your body remembers what your mind rationalizes away. What you consume eventually becomes your inner world. Healing is also practical. Your nervous system shapes your perception of reality. Not every wound deserves lifelong devotion. The body knows when something is unsustainable. Right nourishment is a spiritual practice too. There is a difference between feeding yourself and feeding the wound. Slowness reveals what urgency hides. What you repeatedly return to becomes your altar, the altar of your life. Healing changes your appetite. Embodiment is a form of honesty. And rest is part of creation too. So just want to let that sink in, because we are still going to be continuing working with this energy. Taurus season is slowly coming to an end, but we have Mars moving into Taurus this week. So these are all themes I think we will continue to work with in our own life. And really, in general, this week massively shifts the energetic atmosphere, even though there aren't necessarily more transit than previous weeks. But the quality of the sky and the cosmos and the planets and the signs they're entering into this week, they change the landscape pretty much dramatically. And I really feel like the main theme for this week is the nervous system is accelerating while the emotional and physical body asks for grounding. We're doing both. This week starts off and continues to be very Gemini, Uranian, Mercurial. And so the mental activity massively speeds up. There's a lot of restlessness, racing thoughts, difficulty sleeping. I'm wondering how you guys have been feeling this night coming off from Sunday into Monday, because this is really when we had that Uranus Mercury conjunction in Gemini, and the moon is also in Gemini right now. So there is really this like hyper awareness, hyper associative thinking. A lot of us are really oh, I need to recognize the patterns. I need to see the patterns. And this can create a lot of information overload and nervous system activation. So I wonder how you guys have been sleeping. One thing that I really like to do when I feel like I'm losing my head, which this year has been a lot of times, is to really just take my hands, which is, by the way, Gemini rules over the hands in medical astrology. Just take my lovely hands and just really press the fingertips in my head. And you know, I right now this is a video and I can't do it as slowly as I would do it otherwise, but I just want to show you something that you can do. It just really grounds you back here, you're really pressing and putting on pressure on your head, and this can really ground you back down here into the present, into the physical, because again, this Aries Gemini energy, which is not leaving us anytime soon, can be a lot and can be very overstimulating. Yes, and this is also especially if you have any any of your own natal placements at early degrees of the mutable signs, I would say from 0 to 5 degrees of either Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, or Virgo, this is probably going to affect you a lot more than some of the other signs, because this is just like directly aspecting some of your personal planets. So keep an eye out for that if you do have that. And I do also want to just talk a bit about, because this week Gemini is just going to be so prominent. The sun is also going to move into Gemini this week, so we do officially start Gemini season. So this is an archetype that is very much present this week, and Gemini is a lot about our information systems. About how we communicate, not even just with the outer world, but also our internal world, but it goes both ways, right? As within, so without. There is a lot of pattern recognition. Gemini is, for me, really, if we look at it from a more evolutionary astrology perspective, Aries is the newborn child, and then Taurus is like baby to toddler, and then Gemini is really that stage of the development where we start asking questions, and all of a sudden it isn't about the self anymore, which is like the newborn baby, or about the body, where you explore the body, which is Taurus. It's about questions. It's about asking things. And this is really the first time that we kind of exit outside. And so it becomes less about us and more about what is it that is going on out there. And this is really the Gemini energy. It's not childish, it's childlike. Especially now in our adult years, the Gemini always reminds us to be childlike, to be curious, to ask more questions, because questions open doors and portals. And there is, paired with Uranus, and Mercury together, Mercury being the domicile here, it's really when both of these kind of come together, there is an acceleration of thought, there is an acceleration of culture, there is an acceleration of communication, there is just a lot going on. And Gemini also is a sign that has direct relationship to all the signs where the outer planets are currently moving through. So Pluto in Aquarius, this is a trine relationships. Neptune in Aries, this is a sextile. And then obviously Uranus is now in Gemini itself. So every planet that enters Gemini is going to form an aspect to all these outer planets. So Gemini season is not just Gemini season this year, really. It's a very highly activated Gemini season. Yes, and also, by the way, if you haven't watched my Uranus and Gemini horoscopes yet, I spent a lot more time diving into the archetype of Gemini itself and what this transit may bring collectively and personally on there. So highly recommend watching that one. And now let's get more so into well, we have already talked about this, right? This is an archetype prominent this week, but let's now ground as much as we can ourselves back to Monday, which is now, which is, again, Mercury conjunct Uranus in Gemini. And this is, we talked about it a bit before, but it's really this mental electricity. I think sometimes both of them can really amplify each other in good and bad ways. There's a lot of like downloads, mental downloads that can be happening, a lot of overstimulation, of course, and a lot of insights at the same time, rapid thinking that is almost not stopping. It's very much this feeling that I'm getting when I think of Mercury and Uranus together, specifically in the sign of Gemini, is that, mad scientist that wakes up in the middle of the night and has this burst of ideas, and it's like, I just cannot sleep. I need to write this all down. This is certainly how both of them together can be feeling. There's also a lot of future-oriented thinking and difficulty shutting the brain off. When both of these are together, it's very hard to shut the brain off. It's already hard with social media nowadays, but these two together make it even harder. So yes, I am wondering how you guys have been sleeping over this weekend, and if you are feeling this energy, how it's showing up in your life. If it is, don't worry, you're not going crazy. This is an intensified brain activity type of transit. And it really can feel like your mind is running in 10 different directions all at once. And your thoughts are just multiplying rapidly. And just this urge, like, I want to stimulate myself. I need to stimulate myself. Sometimes what I personally observe and notice in myself is when I am already a bit at the edge, it's so much easier for me to go even more into overstimulation. Like when my nervous system is like, oh, I'm actually so tired. It's much easier for me to spend even more time on social media. When I'm relaxed, it's much easier to not do that. So, and this can kind of be the Gemini energy. And also the fact that the moon is still in Gemini also at the beginning of this week, it just further amplifies the nervous system activation. Like this is something you probably are really feeling in the body, and at the same time it's also difficult feeling it in the body because Gemini moon energy and Gemini energy in general is a bit more fluffy, you know, or all the air signs by default are detached to some degree and some level. That's like their natural state, just because air as an element is the most detached element. It's so not feasible and like tangible. You can't really grasp it. And so when the moon's in Gemini, like there might be a lot of like mental activity, but it's actually really hard to actually be in the body. Like as a fellow Gemini moon, like I know this too well, where oftentimes you think you're feeling your feelings, but you're just thinking them. You're not actually really feeling them. And then there's just a lot of energy up here when you should be releasing it through the body in some sort of way, through sports, any sort of physical activity, or actually sitting down. But again, it's hard because oftentimes you can go more into, I'm going to overanalyze instead. So it is something that is not the most easiest thing, especially in the beginning of this week. It almost feels like this light speed train that is overrolling our brains. And then we get into Tuesday, which I think should feel a lot more pleasant. These are Mars enters Taurus and Venus enters Cancer. I just want to say that. But this is happening here in Central European time, like pretty much after midnight. So for a lot of you, this is actually still kind of part of Monday. But generally, let's speak of Tuesday, because this is really when things begin to shapeshift. I feel like in a very good way. And I do think it's actually a very important energetic shift that we are going through. Even though Mars is in detriment in Taurus, this is not necessarily always bad. It just means that Mars simply operates differently there. It doesn't do its things like Mars in Aries, which we had now for the past couple of weeks, where Mars was like really like, oh, we're gonna do things, we're gonna start things. Like Mars in Taurus is a lot slower, is a lot more about embodiment, is a lot more about resourcing yourself through consistency and putting in the energy day by day to watch something grow, right? Taurus is associated with nature. It's a fixed sign. It's a very much attending to the garden. It can be your inner garden. It can also be your outer garden. But the wisdom here is just that things need tending for them to sprout into a beautiful garden. And you can take that metaphor however you want and apply it to your life in whatever way. And Mars in Taurus is also a lot less impulsive. It is about the senses in the body. But Mars in Aries, I think the difference here is that Mars in Aries has this urge to Mars in Aries is really just the fight reflex, where it's like, I gotta do something. There's immediate action that wants to be taken, and there's not a lot of thinking. Mars in Taurus is about the senses because it is about sensuality. But it's about really feeling things before doing them. Like it needs to feel good in the body for Mars in Taurus to act upon something. It's about creating something that is actually like sustainable for the long run. Because when you take actions at the end of the day, you don't want to constantly just be taking actions that feel shitty. Like it should also feel good in your body. Like, yes, it doesn't always have to be 100% full-bodied. Yes, we need to get out of our comfort zone. But right now I do think it's about like, okay, let's pause first. How can I make this actually feel good in my body before I start to move and change things? And it's much more about being physically grounded. Again, I think, Mars in Aries, I feel like is sometimes this like, ooh, I'm gonna sign up to the gym, I'm gonna do this new workout routine, and then signing up for all these courses, and then your body kind of gets a bit overwhelmed because you just started so many things all at once. And then Mars in Taurus is about the aftercare, the important aftercare. I feel like Mars and Aries would sometimes ignore the aftercare, like the stretching exercises you should be doing maybe before or after workout. Mars and Taurus is like, that's probably the most important part, because if you want to do something sustainable for the long run and build your body, sustain your body, you should not ignore the post and pre-workout regime. So this is really the energy that we're kind of entering here now. And I honestly feel after everything we've been moving through, I think a lot of people are going to welcome this energy. I'm certainly welcoming this energy. I think it's very much needed now, and it's almost like a bit of a breath of fresh earth. Especially after Mars in Aries and Uranus entering Gemini. I mean, obviously Uranus is still in Gemini, but all this like very recent fire air acceleration is, you know, Mars in Taurus like kind of chimes in and is like, can your body sustain the pace your mind is moving at? So yes, and again, Mars in Taurus is concerned with the physical body. We also have Venus moving into Cancer, which is very much concerned with emotional nourishment and safety. And both are asking us to tend to regulation, because what happens is that both of them are forming a sextile to one another as soon as they move into their respective signs, which is a very good aspect for them to form, especially in these two signs that are very much about this, again, physical and emotional nurturance. And I want to build up a future, that is not correct. I want to talk about a further observation that I made here. What I really love about this Mars and Taurus transit is that the way Mars interacts with the benefics throughout this transit. Because at the beginning, as I just mentioned before, Mars enters Taurus and Venus enters Cancer, and immediately they sextile at 0 degrees of both of their signs. And then before, like when we go to the end of this, before Mars leaves Taurus, Mars sextiles Jupiter, also in Cancer, but at 29 degrees. And both Mars then enters Gemini, Jupiter then enters Leo on that same day or the next day. So Mars really is like greeted by both of these benefic planets, Venus and Jupiter, at the beginning and at the end. There's just a middle point here where Mars squares Pluto, and that itself is going to be like the most suspenseful part about this all, and maybe the most difficult. But really the rest of this transit is like fundamentally super workable, super supportive and super resourced. Again, just with Pluto kind of representing the central tension and crisis point here. So, you know, Mars essentially meets one benefic when entering the sign and the other benefic before leaving it. So this is really, I think, a beautiful way. And Mars really in Taurus, it isn't really aspecting any of the other planets, so it's not going to be as turbulent as when Mars was in Aries, you know. And then when Mars enters Gemini, we're going to talk about that, because that's going to be something in and of itself. But that's not going to be until like late June, like pretty much end of June or beginning of July almost. So let's now first focus on working with Mars in Taurus. And we really, it's starting off beautifully and ending off beautifully. So I really love that. Yes, and we're also going to talk much more deeply about this in the Mars and Taurus horoscopes, which I am preparing right now for you, because then you will know exactly what, you know, these benefic sextiles and that Pluto square means for you and your sign. So stay tuned for that one. This is going to be up this week. And we have a few more things to talk about Tuesday. We're starting off quite eventful. Yes, we also have the moon enters Cancer that day, and I really like that because it immediately conjoins Venus that just entered into Cancer. So this also invites in energy that is soft and more creatively nourished, I would say, and like emotionally attuned, and there's like a bit of a tenderness here. And really, I think this urge to reconnect to the body and reconnect to the emotional needs. Again, both of these, I really love that the moon also enters Cancer that day. Like it feels very harmonious. It really feels like a much needed breath of fresh water and earth. So if you can, depending on which climate you're in, I think this is a perfect day to go for a swim and then go and lie in the grass and connect to both of these elements on a fundamental level. Yes, because even though mentally things are speeding up, emotional and physical needs are also very important. And throughout this week, we really have this tension between both of these sides. And then we also have, also on Tuesday, imagine, we have also Mercury sextile Neptune, okay? Mercury in Gemini sextile Neptune in Aries. This is also fueling our imagination and our intuition and inspiration and like symbolic thinking and also creativity. So this can really feel like a bit of a dreamy, visionary, and spiritually receptive day. We also have Mercury also does another thing on that day. Mercury does quite a lot this week. And, we're already at 20 minutes and really there's so much more to say. This is going to be a longer video, but I really want to take my time to talk about everything properly. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I sometimes try to keep this video shorter just because I want to respect everyone's times. And I feel like the 20-minute mark is usually like a good time frame, but I'm sure this video is gonna be super long, so I hope you can bear with me this time around. I want to get all my points across for you, so you actually have a good understanding of what the stars, what the planets are trying to communicate here. Okay, so we're still on Tuesday. Mercury is at the bending of the nodes as well. The nodes are currently at the beginning degrees because they are always moving backwards. So before they are actually preparing to shift to the other signs, they're gonna basically, the beginning of the degrees is the end of the transit when it comes to the nodes. Let's just put it that way. Because soon we are preparing for the nodes to actually move into the Leo and Aquarius axis away from the Virgo and Pisces axis. So this is also right now when a planet is entering Gemini, it's also pretty much very soonishly going to be at the bending of the nodes. Yes, and this can feel, again, also very important because Mercury itself is carrying so much of the collective storyline right now. So there can be themes around crossroads, around shifting the narrative, changing your perspective, changing collective conversations. I do feel like the collective conversations are indeed changing. Or just like the collective narrative is kind of shifting direction. We're asking different questions and it's gonna be even more amplified. Okay. Now let's enter Wednesday. Wednesday, Mercury trines Pluto again. Another Mercury thing. So yes, this is I would say is good, even though Mercury Pluto together can sometimes be a bit heavy, but they are forming a trine, which is a supportive aspect. So I do think the themes of of like these intensive, destructive ways that sometimes Mercury and Pluto can feel like when they contact each other. Yes, they can still come up, but in a more supportive way. So more in a way of where you're like uncovering a truth, but it isn't this like, whoa, life-shattering thing that happens maybe like when an opposition happens or a square. It's more like, oh yeah, I really needed to uncover this truth, like because I needed to have this deep insight about myself. Mercury, Pluto are amazing for pattern recognition and for psychological awareness and seeing what is beneath the surface, like what is beneath the surface. And it's very good for research, can be your own research into your own psyche or other people's psyches. Just understanding deeper emotions, maybe your deeper motivations or emotions of why you do certain things the way that you do, and making connections, again, finding the patterns or recognizing the patterns. It's my job as an astrologer to do that. So but this is collectively, this can be a very good transit for that. The moon is also still in Cancer, continues further down the road, and then conjoins Jupiter in Cancer. So I do think there's also like an emotional amplification and fullness that day. And we also have a waxing crescent moon that day. So yes, I think this can be supportive. Just one thing I would maybe also mention is that because the moon is still in Cancer and is conjunct Jupiter that day as well, is to maybe don't always listen to your emotions fully. You know, sometimes they're real, the emotions are real, but they don't always tell the full truth. Obviously, sometimes the mind can also go in all sorts of directions, but this is also depending on how it's hitting your chart. If something feels extremely intense, maybe sleep over it first before you confront someone or feel like, ooh, I found out this truth and I immediately need to get it out into the world. Like, sleep over it maybe a night before doing that. Okay, then we enter Thursday, and the sun also enters Gemini on Thursday. So we officially have a Gemini season, and that is beginning. And as already mentioned previously, this is not a normal Gemini season because Uranus is already there. So the sun immediately begins activating, Uranus and Gemini themes, which are about acceleration, awakening, and nervous system stimulation and future orientation. We also have the moon moves into Leo that day, immediately forming a sextile to the sun, which I really like. It feels very supportive, which actually I think and I believe makes this whole day seem very enthusiastic and full of like joy and joie de vivre, of like, yes, I really am ready for this new chapter and archetype that is present in my life, and I'm ready to ask questions and be this new person that I wanted to be for so long. So I kind of like it. Again, can also be extremely freaking flamboyant, but yeah, in general, I would say it's a fun day. It's a fun day. Okay, and then we move into Friday, which is also a pretty big day. I think this might be maybe the most eventful week of May, to be completely honest. And it is also very, very... Yeah, there's a lot of energies coming together on Friday because multiple major archetypes collide simultaneously. We have Venus in Cancer squaring Neptune in Aries. And Venus in Cancer, we haven't talked so much about her before, but Venus in Cancer is so much about our longings, is so much about... emotional closeness, our need for emotional closeness. Doesn't just have to be with other people, can also be with our own selves, like our own self-nurturance. A lot of nostalgia is found there, the urge for safety, to create safety, to be a safe person, for intimacy, like real emotional intimacy that is built upon safety, and the need for this like emotional reassurance. And then Neptune in Aries is, a lot about projection and self-projection and fantasy and like the idealization of things and future longings, chasing visions and desires. And when they come together in a square, there can be tension around emotional projection and romantic idealization. There might be two forms of things we are idealizing. The Cancer part is probably like, oh, we're going to thrive in community, and I love that. And then the Neptune and Aries part is like, no, I'm the lone warrior. Both of them can be romantic idealizations of a certain image and lifestyle. And Neptune is often about the image of the mind that we create, that we idealize and fantasize about. Yes, so there can be a confusion around our expectations and also maybe the need to want emotional certainty, which is practically impossible to do right now. Anyways, right, like I think certainty is a topic in and of itself. We all want for it, but certainty is a malleable thing. A very malleable thing. Truth is a very malleable thing. I think it's something that we can be in relationship with, but we have to accept that it is something that changes over time, right? Because sometimes we want to have this like we have this conversation with a person and it's like, oh yeah, there's certainty, but sure, maybe for the day, for the moment, but things can change. That doesn't mean we should go through our lives in a guarded way, and put up our Cancer shells and be like, nobody gets close to me. No, not at all. But I just want to push forward this point where sometimes we get fixated upon, and this I think is really the transit that is like You can't get fixated upon certainty. That's not how it works. And nostalgia can also become very seductive when these two come together. Okay, Venus, Neptune, like nostalgia can become very, very seductive. So be aware of what kind of story arcs and narratives are coming up for you this week. End of this week, because it is already something that I think the Taurus new moon brought up a lot in the process, where it was like, which stories are you feeding yourself? You know, like that's kind of what Venus was doing before, right? Because Venus was the ruler of this new moon and Venus was in Gemini. And so it was about the stories that we're feeding. And now I think this is a more, because, you know, when Venus is in Cancer, there is a lot of emotional attachment that gets activated. And nostalgia really is a bitch in that regard, that sometimes it can just detangle us into this overly fantasized version of how things used to be, and how seemingly things were a lot better when really it actually wasn't. It's just like a romanticized version of that experience or lifetime or relationships or job or era that you had. So yes, Venus in Cancer, Neptune Aries square, that is, you know, really like, what do I emotionally protect and what do I emotionally pursue, and kind of like clashing together. It's also a day, like, be aware of having porous boundaries, or I mean let's put it this way. You don't necessarily have to be aware of having porous boundaries. It's more so that this transit can activate and make you realize that you are having porous boundaries, or that you are emotionally exhausted because you have been overextending yourself to other people. Or that maybe, you know, the other thing can also be true. You have been so focused on yourself, and actually you should be extending yourself a bit more to other people. Yes, also be aware of spiritual and emotional yearning. Yearning can be a big one with Venus, Neptune. Yes, but they're not conjunct, they are square, so there is tension. Okay, this is the first part. Now we get to the second part. The Sun conjoins Uranus. Surprise, surprise. Well, not really, right? Because if Mercury immediately conjoined Uranus when moving into Gemini, of course the Sun does that as well. So there is a massive activation in having breakthroughs, in having disruptions, in having awakenings, revelations, nervous system, overstimulation. Once again, you know, a lot of innovation and unpredictability. A lot of words I'm throwing at you right now. I know. But this is really also what it feels like, to be completely honest. With Mercury and Uranus, it's about our thought processes. When the Sun comes in, what we have been talking about becomes an archetype we are really striving towards, because the Sun talks about the image. Okay, the image that we want to go towards, move towards, that seems very appealing all of a sudden. And it becomes much more livable and much more feasible and visible. And again, you know, this can be sleep disturbances, sudden realizations, and rapid mental shifts. And definitely this can feel exciting, destabilizing, and electrifying all at the same time. All at the same time. Yes. Again, be aware if you have any placements beginning degrees 0 to 5 degrees of the mutable signs, Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo and Pisces, then this is going to affect you very deeply, especially if you have like, you know, your ascendant ruler is there, or maybe your own sun is there, or just like a personal planet. That is gonna, like, take care, you know, like take extra care of your body this week, because this can be mentally very, very harsh. It can feel like this lightning bolt that is inside of you, and that just, like, you know, wants to get out. And really, again, what I always say with Uranus is the line between breakdown and breakthrough can be extremely, extremely thin. And I'm not even saying this as a joke. I've experienced this in my life, like when Uranus was in Taurus opposite my sun. That was a very intense time, and I really had to take care of my body in extra ways, and to like pour out this energy, because otherwise the mental overstimulation just got like really, really unbearable. And this can really go into like mania states. Like, I'm really not joking. So do take extra care here. And use it wisely. use it wisely. You know, if you have a mad scientist moment where you wake up in the middle of the night and you want to create your business, then okay, sure, use it, you know, but use it wisely. Yes. Then, third part, there is more. We have Mercury sextile Saturn. Okay, Mercury in Gemini sextiling Saturn in Aries. I like that because this is a bit of a stabilizer. A bit of a stabilizer. Not the best one, but it is a bit of a stabilizer. Because I do feel like Mercury sextile Saturn feels just a bit like the grounding mechanism amidst the like overstimulation that we're having. Because, you know, Saturn helps structure thought and clarify your priorities and distinguish signals from noise and the chatter, right? There's a lot of noise, but only one stillness. So I do think this can help amidst the chaos to hopefully bring a bit more focus and discernment, integration, and constructive thinking throughout this. Again, pretty much useful around the Uranian overstimulation and the Neptunian fog. So yes, I do like that Mercury and Saturn are also doing their thing on this day. Feels just a tiny bit grounded, at least a little bit. Yes, then on Saturday, like the weekend, there isn't actually a lot going on, which is nice. We have the moon entering Virgo. We have the first quarter moon in Virgo. I do want to mention this though, because this is important. This is Saturday. Because this is happening beginning degrees, so this first quarter moon in Virgo is squaring Uranus directly. So it further, you know, amplifies the themes of nervous system tension, overstimulation, body stress, mental fragmentation, and needing adjustment, routines that are disrupted. So I do think, you know, over the weekend, the body is going to be trying to catch up with the speed of the mind. And the first quarter moon is already a moon that requires action, that is in friction mode. And Uranus intensifies that here because it's like directly in that first quarter moon, like embedded in that. So again, this is why grounding practices, embodiment, rest, nourishment, and regulating the nervous system become very important this week. I mean, really throughout the whole year, I want to say, because we are in like pretty air and fire dominant times. But I do also think it is a bit easier because Venus and Mars are going to be in Cancer and in Taurus. Yes, so I do like that. Okay, so let's, you know, start coming into conclusion mode. This is a long video. Gosh, we're already at 40 minutes almost. Again, this week strongly activates both the mind and the nervous system and the emotional and physical body. Because again, Gemini Uranus is about acceleration, about thoughts, stimulation, information, and then Venus and Mars and water and earth signs are about embodiment, about nourishment, emotional regulation, and physical grounding. So the cosmos is asking us not to leave the body behind while the mind accelerates and is in acceleration mode. Yes, bit of a preview for next week. We're gonna have that Mars square Pluto, the most suspenseful part, the biggest tension point in the Mars and Taurus transit. That is gonna be about power struggles, intensity, and pressure. But we also have Sun trine Pluto, which is supportive in this constellation on the same day. We're gonna have Venus square Saturn, which is going to be a lot about our emotional reality checks. And we're going to end May next week with a Sagittarius full moon. The second full moon of the month. We began with the Scorpio full moon. We're ending it with the Sagittarius full moon. But we're gonna talk more about that next week, of course. And yes, also want to mention once again our astrology summer get-together in Croatia. The applications have been flying in. If you are interested in having a more curated event, this is specifically for people that already know a bit more about astrology, that feel like they can have these conversations that I'm having right now with ease. And they simultaneously want to have a summer holiday together. Like if that is you, if you just kind of want to be with other people that know astrology and talk astrology and we're also on a summer holiday together. Like, we happen to be on this beautiful island of Kirk in Croatia during the week where we have this total solar eclipse in Leo and Mars moving into the sign of Cancer. What better group to have around you than fellow astrologers that also get it? So if this is something that feels like you're called to that, I have the application down in the link below. I'm reviewing all of them personally. Okay, every one of you is gonna have a personal brief, like 15-minute Zoom call with me, or we can correspond through Instagram to see if, you know, it's a fit, if there's anything that needs to be adjusted. And yeah, you're gonna find a lot more information in the application form. By the way, the application form doesn't, you know, you're not immediately signed up if you do that. It's just for me to kind of gauge in the interests and have the contacts of the people. So yes, you're not committing yourself to anything if you apply, and please don't be shy. No matter your age or gender or whatever, like, everyone is welcome. I'm actually, even if you're a man, don't be shy, okay? I would love, we already have a male person that is going to be there, and so, you know, don't be shy, okay? I'm very welcoming of that as well. Yes, at the end of the day, we just want to make it a good fit for everyone, okay? But just, again, if you feel like, oh, like, I shouldn't apply because, I don't know, I'm a man, or I don't know how many years old, like, that is not a ruling out factor. Everyone is welcome just as they are. You just got to have a bit of a language of the stars that you're already speaking pretty fluently. Yes, and again, Mars and Taurus horoscopes coming up. Uranus and Gemini horoscopes have been released last week. Totally worthwhile digging in now that this archetype is even more present, because I really talk much more about the Gemini archetype on there. And yeah, this is what I have for this week. A pretty long video, but there is a lot. You know, I think it's really the most eventful week of May for sure. And you know, June is going to be much more quieter transit wise. So yes, this is what I have for you now. Much love, guys. And we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now.